Hold my nose. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Okay, right. We also here. Is that true? Can you hear me?
Who's that?
Oops, I'm muted. Harry, can you maybe mute yourself or maybe say hello? Or I'll mute you. Hold on a second. There we go. Now I muted you. Okay, well, let's start. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey. And usually these experiments are different every time. This time the theme is to bring a friend or invite some strangers. So some of us are more strangers than others. And we usually start with a quick check-in on where we are, what's sort of going on, how we feel today, very briefly. Don't have to give a whole resume or anything. So I'll start. I'm in Toulouse, France. It's nice weather. It's still summer. Don't have much to say. Have a little bit of a busy day otherwise, but I always look forward to our little meetings here. So anybody else who wants to say hello?
Hello, I'll go. I'm Red. Hello. I'm not sure. I've not used this on this computer before, so I'm not sure if it's working or not. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it works great. And just a little tip, you want to put it on gallery view if you haven't already, then you see all of our faces.
Yeah, I can see some other faces at the top there.
But you sound great, so...
Okay. So yeah, it's my first time coming to a conversational experiment. I've been persuaded by Tim Sanderson to come along. So I see him there. He has a small child with him. I've got a small kitten with me. So yeah, I'm in England, in Norfolk in England, and I've got no idea what we're doing, so I'm just interested to see what happens.
That's all the better.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Tim, and this is Lila, my assistant. Yeah, we're in Norfolk as well, about, what, 8 miles away from Red, something like that, so not that far. And we've just been cutting the grass, which is always very pleasurable, a bit like a meditation for me. And Red, you can mute yourself when you're not speaking. It helps
Okay.
the whole thing go more smoothly. That's it.
Anybody else? Harry, you brought a friend. I've invited a couple of friends that I thought were going to be there, but they're not here so far. So say hello, Harry.
I hope you can streaming noise here. You can hardly hear me.
It's lovely anyway. So you're in some kind of cafe and you have your friend Sven. That's cool. That sounds sort of like a Swedish name or something. Well, whatever, right? It's cool anyway. All right, so hello to you and hello to Sven. And maybe you'll succeed in saying something. Otherwise, just make appropriate gestures. All right. Cool. Who else is here?
This is Ron in Chicago. I'm here. And Sophie, I invited, at your request, I invited musicians, 3 musicians, to come to this event, and none have been able to accept.
It's
But
okay.
I did my best to honor your wishes, Sophie.
And I should mention, this is always an experiment. So whatever happens, it's an experiment. It can't really fail. Whatever takes place is what takes place. And usually we can learn something from that. And Sophie, are you there? Are you hiding? Can you say something? Maybe not. Anyway, we'll just get started. And as often in these experiments, there might or might not be a theme. This time, there's just the experiment that we meet some strangers or some friends. And overall, the idea is usually that some kind of emergent dialogue will happen. So it's not really about being smart and saying clever things and presenting your elevator pitch or something. It's more about what we discover together and what happens when we get sort of quiet and we see what's there in our midst and what wants to emerge, what wants to be said. And usually that's interesting. So I suggest we just sort of take a moment to be really present, take a deep breath, notice where you are, notice the seat or the ground under you, whichever way you're placed. Harry and Sven are walking around outside, so just feel the sidewalk under you and find a chair and sit down and take a deep breath. And it's okay to be quiet here. Sometimes nothing much happens before something wants to happen. So just take it easy, take a deep breath. And whenever we're ready to say something, we will.
Okay, hopefully this works better.
Much better. I kind of like, as a way of meeting people, meeting strangers, to start it in silence, or just sort of being present, looking at each other. At the same time, I also feel a little bit the sort of awkwardness of doing that. Like, what do people think? Is that appropriate? Or are people sort of frantically thinking about what to say or what to do about that? And that's probably a good thing too. Maybe it's better to meet sort of in a little bit awkwardness than having sort of our prepared image to present to others. So it makes me kind of wonder how to do that more, or how to make it more practical to meet people in silent awkwardness and start from there.
I think it's quite nice. I'm not feeling awkward. I think it's nice to have space just to sit and, yeah, look at new faces moving, see where people are. It feels like a really nice, relaxed way to begin to connect with people. So I'm enjoying it.
Okay, can you hear me properly now?
Yeah, pretty well.
Okay, thanks. So we're here in the middle of Antwerp, in a bar where we're supposed to meet some more friends in about an hour. And I brought my friend I just know rather shortly, but that's okay. Becoming a very good friend rapidly, and if I understood about you kind of struggling with the noise here, I thought Ron brought 3 musicians, and I also thought I saw Sophie flashing by. Is that true or not? Where are they?
Your sound is a little choppy, but I think we sort of got most of it.
I've been delaying saying anything. I thought I would kind of give deference to to new people here, maybe. And since I don't have any new people with me, I've been, as I said, trying to give deference to the new people who are here.
I haven't been saying anything because, quite frankly, I haven't got the foggiest idea what's going on right now. So
That is a good reason.
I'm hopefully awaiting what's coming next. Oh, and by the way, that awkwardness in silence seems to be a Western thing. Most of the world, they're quite content with being together in silence.
Yeah, I'm finding that I prefer this silence to actual speaking now. I'm getting more and more comfortable with it. It's a really nice way to be with people, even in this quite bizarre realm of the digital world. It seems to still work for me. Yeah, I guess I felt initially a little bit of responsibility for Red having an interesting time, but I quickly got over it because I remembered that Red can take care of herself. She doesn't need my worrying about anything. So yeah. Oh, and this is it, Sven. This is it. It's already happening.
I think maybe part of my slight feeling of awkwardness about it is not entirely just my own, but I'm a little bit sort of concerned for, I mean, here we are being quiet and somebody who shows up who somehow doesn't know what to do with that, or I'm a little afraid that somebody will sort of screw it up. Kind of like I like just being in quietness, and if something really needs to be said, we say it. But I have sort of a little bit of a negative expectation too, or feeling of, oh, now somebody's just going to ask what the subject is, or what's the outcome of this meeting? What are we doing this? What are the? I mean, there are many ways of sort of screwing it up, which is not screwing it up. It's just whatever people have on their minds. But for me, it's sort of, I have a little bit of a dread that somebody's just sort of not willing to stay in it. But that might just be my personal fears or something.
I feel it's a bit like monks in monasteries who are praying. I always feel that they're doing something useful for the whole world by doing that, just sitting in quiet and meditating or praying or doing a bit of quiet gardening. So when we're here together like this, in these quiet moments, I feel like we're doing the world a great service because it's very busy out there. There's a lot going on, maybe too much going on. So I feel like we're somehow keeping things in balance like this.
Well, at least it's good excuse.
The busyness is the reason why my friends aren't here. And it's the reason why so many people are not here. Maybe a bigger here than this meeting. And I guess it's just true of life in general, but maybe focusing on the online part of it particularly, that's especially true. And people don't believe it's real. And a lot of people say and believe and give the advice professionally that we use this medium, the internet, pretty much as it's not real, but you kind of just set up a fake thing and people get interested and you sell your product. I mean, I've heard it stated pretty much that way. It's not real, it's kind of fake. You just make it look like something's happening. On the other hand, that's somewhat true of life in general anyway. And so this unreality, this fakeness is actually real. It's part of life anyway. It's very confusing. so maybe that's maybe my theme is that there's a lot of it, for better and for worse, it's a show, and people often feel that it's not real or that it is real. Well, yeah. So in Hamlet, Hamlet says, "The play's the thing that will," I forget the exact wording, but that will show what the king really thinks. And so the play is fake and it's real.
In a sense, it's maybe, well, an exercise in, as you say, well, connecting with what's real or recognizing what is real. We often have it sort of inverted, like we think that our thoughts and plans and goals are real, or opinions are very real, and they need to be on the table and be discussed, where maybe it's more real to shut up and pay attention and sense what's there when we skip over all of that mental stuff.
What interests me at this moment is that I have the question this afternoon about what will do. Can you hear me? Can you hear me better now? No.
We hear you a bit badly. For some reason, we heard Sven better.
Is this better?
That's a little better. Maybe Sven
Oh,
has
yeah,
the
okay.
microphone.
Well, I'll mute this part.
Okay, let me try and talk. What was I saying? Oh yeah, we had a discussion about the connection.
That's a freight train, by the way.
Interesting life here. There's a train running by, so it's not the best environment. You look very concentrated. That's good.
If you're a little closer to the microphone, I think we can hear you all right.
Get your lips a little closer to the phone. Is this better? So we can pretend that we're together, we're alone. Now, what I was saying, good context needs a kind of embodiment, Sven states. So that, I think that's very important. And the interesting thing is that we can't do this here. And yet, in these experiments, for me, was very helpful to learn that we can be very much in contact without having that. So I like that. Being together in silence does a lot for me as well. I just want to share that.
And I just want to say I really enjoy your picture when you're not on it, Harry, where you have this freight train going by and a rose in front. That's very interesting. I'm not saying you shouldn't be on it, but it's pretty cool, the picture.
Mama, can I have this?
She knows I'm a captive audience. She can get away with things. And I'm trying to be occupied elsewhere.
I've enjoyed seeing the scene in Hamburg and the activity there. You said it was Hamburg?
I think it's Antwerp.
Pardon me. That's quite radically different. Where did I hear that? But I must have just heard the vowels. Well, anyway, and it's the far-flung nature of it all is pretty neat. And I'm not sure if that's related to, maybe I think it is related to the idea of the importance of embodiment and the physicality. I've found one way or another that even without actual physical presence, that communication can still be physical, and it is physical. I mean, your neurons are physical. It's a physical experience, and I'm seeing the scene there. Just because I can't touch doesn't mean that it's not physical. I mean, I'm saying it is physical.
So that also sort of shows like the value of this. Well, it's in part that we're seeing each other. We're perceiving a lot of peripheral things, which are physical, even though it's over video. But it makes quite a huge difference to see each other compared with just reading each other's words. For example, we transmit and receive and send an enormous amount of information just by being able to look at each other. So it's a little silly if we then feel we have to think up some important topic to talk about because we're already here. We're physically present together, which already tells us volumes.
Even in a very limited physically limited, even in a very limited bandwidth of communication. Well, it's not very well. Text, when we read each other's words online, that's one of the things that probably does seem the most unreal to many of us. It's still the same though. It takes more work, I guess. I have to work harder to make it real and when I'm reading someone's words online. And it's not my favorite way of doing it. I would rather be here, not only with video, but when I say here, I mean, I'd rather physically be with people to do things, communicate. But it's still, I found that it's quite possible to do it even through the most limited channels. One guy I met online he's legally blind, he can hardly see, and it's getting worse, and his hearing is almost gone. He is a guitar player. He's a fellow guitar player, however, and he feels the vibrations of the guitar. He kind of hears it that way, and he communicates online. He's gone through, it took a hell of a lot of work. He had to figure out how to do all this stuff and get help and use a Braille system that allows him to communicate online. And that's a real communication that we had. And think of all that work. And we complain, or I complain, if it's just I have to bother with parsing somebody's text and trying to make something real out of it. Well, we can make something real out of it.
I think even just a few seconds together in a medium with more bandwidth like here tells us much more than we might get in other ways. Like I know Red from Facebook. I liked many of the things she's posted, and she's liked my things. So I knew I would probably like her, but I didn't have a sense of who. Well, I did have a sense of it, but like having just a few seconds of seeing each other makes a big difference. And because whether we try or not, it's hard not to have a sort of limited, somewhat fake picture of each other just from text. So I really believe in like the periphery of being with other people. You learn so much just from seeing where they are, how they move, how they breathe, how they speak, seeing what's behind them, who else is there, what's going on, how they deal with the other people around them. That it makes a lot of difference to me. It tells me a lot about somebody's character by seeing how they are in their own environment, which I couldn't easily guess just from seeing their posts. So I want the truth from presence in sort of unguarded moments. And this is not the totality of it, but being together like this, a lot of our life will go through and spill through and be visible to others. And I think that's a very good thing.
Yes, I agree, Flemming. It's been really interesting in the few meetings I've had with people online, how surprised I've been by hearing the tone of their voice, which is not matched up at all with how I imagined that they were going to sound. So people who I imagined have like a really deep tone voice, have a really high squeaky voice, and just those little things itself, just the tonality, and then seeing their gestures and their body movements as they speak, and the sort of the lyrical flow of their voices, it just adds so much more to, you know, these dry, static moments of Facebook pictures that we see. So yeah, I've started to warm more and more to meeting people this way. So yeah, thank you for inviting me in here. It's good to see you moving and to see your face.
Oh, and I wanted to say hello to Heidi. I saw you sneak in, and so we're just join in at any moment. We haven't done anything particularly mysterious and secret, so that you can't just join into.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just was a little late. And the topic is bring a friend. I thought I'd bring myself today. Again. I'm a friend of mine. Hope so.
As we sit here discussing the physicality of just seeing each other and hearing each other, and how much that helps over just reading text in a chat group or something. I feel myself wondering what it would be like if we had a device that would convey the heartbeat of the person speaking to those listening. Something as simple as that. So you monitor the speaker's heartbeat, and everybody else feels the heartbeat close to their heart. Just a random thought.
Well, again, there's a lot to say for sort of the peripheral awareness, and it reminds me of dancing. Like I'm quite passionate about dancing, and there's lots of ways of learning to dance, and different teachers or different dance styles might pick a different approach. And right now, one of my favorite dances is Brazilian souk, and some teachers will teach it as like you don't even start with the dance steps. Like first you need to learn how to like be present with each other. You need to learn how to touch another person, like how you don't just touch them. You're like, you need to be very aware of how you're touching somebody else and how your skin is touching theirs. And that you might spend quite some time learning how to be aware of being close to somebody and to touch them. And then you might start being aware of breathing, like you're here with another person and they breathe. And if you're aware of how this other person breathes and you sort of connect with that, and we sort of breathe together, then the dance movements sort of develop from, okay, we take a breath and then we move, rather than just, okay, I need to start going back on 1, 2, and 3. it's a very different thing if we start by sort of synchronizing our presence, our physical presence, that we're actually breathing, our hearts are beating, they are, and that we use that to move us, rather than sort of a mental thing of, okay, now would be the good time, or does he understand what I'm saying? Rather, it comes naturally. It just evolves out of our presence together. So I sense that same thing in conversation, or I'm looking for it. I sense that it could be exactly the same, the way we talk with each other.
On some of these calls that we've had in the past, there have been moments where we seem to have all kind of connected in some deeper way. And I've had physical sensations and experiences in my body that feel like I'm feeling what other people are feeling in those moments. So there's some kind of crossover. I mean, there's no way for me to prove that, but I've definitely kind of felt and had all the other kind of signals from seeing how people look, and as well as speaking to them. And I think that's what happens when we get into that place. We can't really define what it is, but we all know it when it happens. There's this sort of feeling around it. And I think that's somehow the same thing as what you're describing, Fleming, in the dancing. It's that thing of the boundary between people dissolves, and there's just this one thing going on that everybody's having an experience of. Yeah.
So your description, Tim, reminds me of when we've done contact improvisation together. I don't know how familiar everybody else is with this dance form of contact improvisation, but it's very much about a meeting of bodies and being in that place of flow and meeting with other, and following where the movement takes our bodies. And it can happen just with two people doing it together, or a whole group of people. And in some ways it's about, it is this kind of giving and taking of weight and energy, but ultimately it's about, I think, letting go and a surrender to what wants to move through the bodies that are moving together. So I can see definitely the similarities between what's happening here in conversation and a more sort of physical, embodied, somatic form like contact improvisation. And in fact, whenever I've done contact improvisation, it impacts on every other aspect of my life. So it makes, conversation with others much more even and fluid and flowing, makes my creativity much more fluid and, connected to something greater. That's what it makes me think of.
And there's something about the physical act of, like in contact improv. I mean, you're connecting, you're touching each other, and then you see how it can move, how your different body parts can move, and how you move together. And the constraints of that is part of what makes it work. I mean, you can only move in the way that bodies can work, but there's an infinite number of possibilities, but you have to sort of go with what's there, which makes it work. And sometimes in communication between each other, we might forget that kind of thing. We might try to do things that really don't work. I mean, we don't connect the pieces that are there. We might not be dealing with what actually is there. Whereas something like contact improv teaches us to be present with what really is there and moving, taking that somewhere else, which we might not know exactly where it is, but it always, in a certain sense, makes sense because the bodies are moving. There's a built-in sort of sanity check or rationality in it because, I mean, my arm is not suddenly over in the corner. It's still stuck to my body. But if I go along with how the parts move and I'm willing to go along with that, it becomes interesting. And somehow that's harder to do in a conversation where we can be all sort of all over the place abstractly, and we might not notice that the arm is no longer attached to the shoulder kind of thing. Hi, Sophie.
Have you heard any of the conversation, Sophie?
I think you're muted.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, everybody. No, I couldn't reach any video nor any sound. So, hello, Red. Hello, Sven. Hello, Fleming, Tim, Ron, Harry, and Heidi. Good to see you all again. I'll have to catch up.
Well, I'm going to repeat, Sophie, that really instigated by your request, I tried to recruit musicians to this meeting. I was unable to. I contacted 3 musicians that I have long-term, in some case, 2 cases, long-term relationships with, and we collaborate, and yet no one was able to make it. I'm sorry.
Please don't be. I didn't manage to get on board non-musicians neither.
So I was wondering, is it because they have to show their faces, or is it the shyness, or what is the reason?
Basically, the reason I got were people were not available. And I was aware not to give too many details and make it as friendly and informal as possible. But no, it didn't work. But I think we've got new incomer today, so it's great.
So yeah, I mean, it's an experiment either way, and it would be lovely if we could interact with each other and have conversations without ever really having to apologize or worry about the stuff that we didn't do or we should do, which we often spend a fair amount a fair portion of our interaction on that it's not right. I should have done this. I'm sorry. I tried. Whereas in the final analysis, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is that we're here, whichever way we got here, and whatever happens is the right thing. And that's cool.
Well, it is always the right thing. I certainly understand all that. And yet, I'm sorry, Sophie, just because I care about it. It's not because I feel that I've failed, really. I'm not worried about failing. Not in the least.
Thank you for caring, Ron. That's great. Thank you. They will come later.
The unavailable, you mentioned that people were unavailable, and kind of going over that topic again, that it did come up earlier in this conversation, is people's unavailability because of busyness, and so it's such a rampant plague of busyness. It's gotten more and more pronounced over the years, decades, and centuries, and I suppose there are always examples of it, but anyway, it's So it is interesting also, though, Heidi, that you brought up the question of shyness. That could be a factor. I don't think it was in the case of the people I talked to, because they're all outgoing and performers, and they're not shy about their hams, and so in that case, it could be true. It is true that many people are shy, and I encounter a lot of people in music teaching, for example, that are very shy and have to try to draw them out, and that would be very difficult to do in this kind of situation because it's so random seeming, and so I don't know what to do about it was dealing with this situation and being more able for us to get together and do the things we need to do. Starting to ramble here. Remember somebody made some comment about this topic, and it seemed like it was helpful. It might be a way to. I can't remember what was that. Maybe someone can remember what was the.
Well, sometimes all you need to do is nothing. Like, we can worry a lot about what we should have done or what we could do, whereas it might be interesting to just see what shows up.
That's getting pretty close to what I was searching for. I guess that it was just the general topic of silence. It's very curious how silence plays into this whole dilemma that I've been talking about, and wouldn't be so easy to convince many people of that either. Just be quiet for a while. And there's no convincing really anyway. There's just sort of like magic and trickery, and somehow people find their way. And that's often how it works out in the cases I was talking about with shy music students. Really, all I can do is set up an atmosphere, a situation, and somehow it generates something, and wow, something, and then this shy person says, wow, I did this, I did something.
Hi. We have friends coming up, and it's becoming noisy and complicated here to have the conversation continue. So I think it's as part of the experiments, I will just let you finish you on your own, if that's okay for you.
It is perfectly perfect that you have friends coming over and you have lots of friends sitting around. That's very much in the spirit of the experiment. So you don't have to apologize.
So thanks a lot, and we'll do the next. I'll hear about you later. Okay.
Yes. Take care. Good to meet you, Sven.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Harry, Sven. So good to meet you.
And you can just leave the camera on if you want. Oh.
I think coming back to shyness and not showing up, I think this is very, very, very strong. At least with the introvert people, and we can think that's half of the population. And I find it often that people say, no. That's actually what, for me, was then a business idea, to help people to come out of this, especially women, because I sort of did it. I mean, I was a classical singer. I went on the stage, but speaking in front of people who live watch, and you might not remember what you have to say or stuff like this. This is a different thing. In this context, it might be different, but when you do public shows, as we do, there is very much the fear. Oh no, I would. How do you say, bruta figura? I would compromise myself. People would think, and so. I think it is learnable, but only with practice. And Red, you said that's the first time or the few times that you come up and on video, and it's great. I'm glad you are here and that you are practicing, and you have, to me, the emanation of being perfectly fine with that. So that's good. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it comes back again. I keep on coming back to contact improvisation, but I think it comes back again to that place of being really comfortable with not knowing and being in the moment and improvising, being really comfortable with just improvising in the moment. And yeah, I think that's come through doing somatic movement exercises. So I kind of had that sense of it in my body, how it feels to be comfortable in that moment and to be not knowing where things go. And I think that's applied to so many different things, not just conversations, but lots of different areas in my life. So yeah, and again, comfortable with the silences and the stillnesses and the not doings, which I'm noticing more on this conversation. When I'm doing movement body work with people, it always seems to be an endless flow. There's not so much, not moving or not connecting. So it's quite nice in this conversation to have just these moments of complete stillness or waiting, or, just waiting for what wants to emerge.
So there could be some room or place or opportunity for, maybe teaching people or showing people how to get over what they might think is shyness. Because often one has sort of totally the wrong idea about what it is. Like, you're there and people are going to have all these opinions about you. And often it's something else that's required. Like, I'll give one example from like public speaking. Both Sophie and I are in a Toastmasters club. Toastmasters is practicing public speaking. And one of the exercises in a Toastmasters club is improvised topics. It's called table topics. You invite somebody to come up on the stage and you give them a totally random question or thing to talk about, and they have 2 to 3 minutes to talk about it. And it's interesting how a beginning speaker will often be really freaked out about that. Like, you're invited to speak about something you don't know about, and we'll spend half of the time sort of apologizing that, well, I'm sorry, I didn't really know, I'm not prepared, I don't really know any thing about the situation in Iraq. I didn't know. Well, what can I say? Let me see. Let me think. Where really the answer to it, to a large degree, is just to be present with what you feel and who you're with. So, I mean, you can spend a little while just saying hello and thank you. I'm glad to be here. I didn't expect this question, and it makes me feel a little uneasy because I don't know about it. It's more. It would be more interesting to hear about what you actually feel than to get your sort of mental excuses. So, just being present, talking about what you do know, changing the topic would be perfectly all right in that situation, where so often people feel a pressure from, I have to answer the question. Somebody gave me a question. I don't know anything about it. Well, sorry, I'm thinking, I'm trying to get the answer. Whereas that's not really very interesting. It's interesting to get what you actually do perceive and know and experience, and in a way you can't go wrong with that. It's whatever is there, just like the contact improv. I mean, I'm touching your shoulder, so obviously we're going to go from there. We're going to maybe roll or move or something. The answer is sort of right there with whatever you've got is what's there to talk about, not something that isn't there. So you don't have to get really stressed about talking about things that aren't there, that should be there. There's always something there, but that's kind of hard to learn and to relax with. That's just being authentic, and to some degree, just whatever it is, just say what it is, and that's it. It doesn't have to be complicated.
It is so simple when described that way. And it reminds me of a word that one of us has said earlier on about the state of busyness. And what has just been described is the opposite. Suddenly there's a space in front and a free space. And if we're so used to being in a state of busyness, we don't know what to do and we feel lost. So I feel it's part of reversing what we're getting so used to do or so used to go through, doing one thing after the other. And those kind of improvisation moment and this space left during what you're describing, Fleming, with the table topics, it's really reversing what we're used to do so often and opening an interesting bracket for a few minutes. It's learning. I think it's really a learning process, and it has really contributed to feel the difference with the constant state in a day of doing one thing after another. So, yeah, I like it.
And to give another example from another kind of improv, like years ago, I was in an improv acting group, which was fun as sort of a personal development thing of being comfortable letting things just sort of appear. And the rules, so to speak, of improv apply to so many other things. Like some of you have surely heard about them. Like one of them is just say yes to whatever happens. I mean, whatever somebody introduces in the situation, just, well, start with that. It's yes. Just like in the contact improv, you're touching my shoulder. Well, I shouldn't be no, I wanted to touch your thigh to start with. That's not going to work. I mean, whatever you got, that's what you start with. The same in a conversation, whatever's here, that's what we start with. And what was my point? Sorry, well, it was the thing about doing nothing. Like if you ask somebody to do a theatrical improv thing by themselves, like here, get up in front of the group and do something. Most people would be really very stressed about that. Like, what do? This needs to be funny. So I should have prepared something. I didn't prepare anything. So I'm going to I'll tell a joke or something. And it's not very good because you're trying too hard to do something. Whereas some of the most interesting things to watch people do is just sort of quietly be present and maybe explore something. Like, get up on the stage and just explore the chair that's standing there. Like, it can be very, very both funny and interesting to see somebody interact with a chair if they actually are willing to be present and sort of slowly discover it. And if it's humorous, they will get in some kind of trouble with the chair. They'll have some difficulty with it, and they'll get in trouble, and they'll try to get out of it, even very slowly. And even if they have no idea what to do, if they're willing to slowly discover the trouble with the chair, it's very interesting. Where it's not interesting if they try to be funny and clever and have a lot of material and impress people. So it's kind of the same with speaking or having a conversation. Like, the more we can be willing to be with what is there, and be willing also to get in trouble with it if that's what it takes. Like, get out on thin ice and see how we can maybe make it out of there or not. Either way, it's interesting and entertaining, and what takes us out of it is the many ways we're trying to be clever or interesting or answer the question or something, where really we should just be with it and see how it develops.
Yeah, I think you're right, Fleming. It's about being just in the moment with it. And as soon as any fears arise about what we're going to do, it's like we're not in the moment. We're thinking about what other people are thinking about it, and we're in the place of judgment and all of those things. But if we're just in the middle of the flow of it ourselves and just kind of curiously open to exploring where it goes, then it becomes this really delightful experience. Even if we get it wrong, wrong, whatever wrong means, it's just an exploration. It doesn't really matter. I think that's the other thing as well, is taking our own judgment out of the equation as well. It's like we're just playing. And another thing that comes to mind in exploring this is telling my daughters bedtime stories. So, every night they want a bedtime story, and we have the lights off, so we have to just make it up as we go along. And quite often it'll be a bit like an improvised situation where we'll say, okay, well, what do you want a story about? And they'll give you something like, I don't know, 2 mice. And then just kind of going with it, what happens to the 2 mice? And I've got no idea what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen to the 2 mice, but we just go along with it. Tim did a story, I think, for a long time that went on for like 2 years or something. Different installments every night with these things. I think that, just that kind of small home life exploration was actually really great learning for me as well, in just improvising story or improvising where anything's going to go without worrying about getting to an ending or worrying about it having to be interesting or any of those things.
I should say that we're getting to we're at the top of the hour, so we can move towards what we usually do at the end, which is sort of see what happened, how did this experiment work, move into a little more of a meta level and seeing how we like this and what happened.
Mama?
Go on. She can't speak. You tell her.
I found a vowel today. It was big.
A big mole.
Yeah. A big vowel.
Oh, vole.
And it was in the pile of that soil, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was in the pile of the soil, in the soil.
That's pretty cool.
I'm not sure I understand. Was it this bowl? Was it dug up from the earth? It was in soil, or am I totally misunderstanding?
No, it's just on the soil.
On the soil? All right, I thought maybe you dug it up. I thought maybe it was an old pottery from long ago that you found underground. It was not that.
It was
Well,
a
it's still a
vole.
great find.
It was a vole, which is a small furry thing. bit like a mouse, but this a bit bigger. Yeah, this one was very big. It might have been pregnant.
I completely misunderstood. So it's a vole.
A vole. Yeah.
So that's really exciting.
Grace, I found a lizard today.
And the lizard. This is not quite the meta conversation, is it, Chloe?
Oh, it's totally cool.
Good. Perfect.
I should point out that these two girls you can see are sisters. This is Gracie and Lila.
Well, I think this is better than the meta conversation. I didn't find any lizards today, but I played with my kittens. They're not here right now. I should have my kittens. I have a white kitten that looks just like the white one that Red had there, and I have a gray one also. And I had an orange one, but it has moved away to somewhere else. So we're keeping the gray and the white one.
We've got two, though. The other one doesn't like the kitten very much, and it's out. There it is.
Yes. Well, we have two other cats that don't like the kittens very much either. In part because their mother was a little bit sort of aggressive protecting them, but the mother has moved away. She lives with my son, who lives quite a bit away. So we're just keeping the kittens. So the other two cats have not gotten used to that it's safe to interact with the little kittens, so they're keeping their distance.
At this point, I want to make a little bit of publicity. I have a website where I have written many stories of my cats, as you are cat lovers, and my-cat.org. And I have had more than 40 cats in my life, and all the time is something going on. So I write a lot of stories about them. And would appreciate if you like it, and if you want to write a story for me, it would be wonderful, because I think we can learn so much from our animals.
I can't hear you, Grace, if you were talking, because you guys were muted. There you go.
Well, we've got two cats. One's called Kitty, and the other one's called Leo, which was the one Mama was showing you. Though Kitty doesn't like Leo very much, because I don't know, maybe because she doesn't like new cats in her house, because she's a bit older. She's 3. She's black, and she sleeps on my bed at night.
Cool. I have a cat called New Cat, because sometimes cats end up with sort of weird names like Kitty or New Cat, because my granddaughter, who's 3 years old, I mean, we had to tell her there was a new cat, so it ended up just being called New Cat, because that's what she was really excited about. So forever it will be New Cat.
I think that cats have created the internet to take over the world because they always seem to get in there somehow.
No, Lila.
Sorry, we're hijacking the closing up of the call.
It's okay.
Uh-oh.
Here she is.
Hi.
She's in a sort of pouncy mood at the moment. She's jumping on everything she can get, even my arm.
She looks a little pouncy, and she looks very much like the one I have, although mine has sort of orangey ears and a few orangey patches, but otherwise she's white the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I had 5 white cats, and living in Italy with so much sun that they have not enough protection for the ears. And so I saw that one gray ears that would be perfect, because white ears, then cancer came and it was not really good. So sweet one, that one.
Anyway, so my meta conversation. There doesn't have to be any. It's fine. But if anybody has any sort of concluding remarks about how you enjoyed this whole thing, feel free to share.
I do that. I enjoy the children being with us and the kitty being with us. It's another dimension. It's nice. And maybe, I mean, I don't have children, but maybe there would also be several generations together. Talk together would be a nice idea too.
It's a great idea, and I often am concerned, or I'm noticing that there's so much division between the lives of people of all different ages. I just, as much as feasible, it's not feasible in every respect, I guess, but I would just love to see it more, just all one generation. One peculiar, maybe one thing that did kind of set me off on this way of looking at it is that in musical life of musical performance of, like, of pop music, not so much of classical music, but it's highly dependent on the bar scene, so that creates an immediate division. You have to be old enough to drink to see this performance. I mean, I've seen it directly affecting people I know, and I just bemoan it. So I love to see as much. I'm very glad we had people of all ages and various species of animals here today.
Well, it helps make it more possible, I think, for me, because sometimes I avoid doing things like this because it's like the middle of the day and it feels like, well, I've got the girls, so I can't take part. So it helps to feel that it's a more relaxed place that I can, the family life in all of its shapes and forms can also flow in and out as well.
Mama, I've got this shoe again. Another shoe.
Show it. Yeah, I thought it was quite a strange, quite a strange disjointed call today, but I don't mind it.
Hello.
Well, I think it was cool.
I feel the children and the cats were the friends that were supposed to show up today. And it's good.
Absolutely.
And it's good.
All right. So unless there are any other concluding remarks, I would like to thank you all for coming, friends and family and cats and strangers and stuffed animals.
Well, we have to go, but thank you, everybody. I'd just like to say, I think Ron's idea of having different generations on a call would be a good thing to do next.
Okay. So,
like a multi-generational call.
okay, well, let's see if we can figure that out. So for anybody who wants to stay, we'll have a short planning session afterwards. Anybody of you is welcome. But otherwise, I'd like to thank you all for being here. It's been lovely. Great to meet you. And take care. Hopefully see you again. So bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Red. Thanks, G.